Welcome back to a windy day out here on the dock today. As you probably guessed from the intro and the title, we're talking about this particular firearm right here. This is the Derya Arms TM-22. They have a ton of different variants of this particular firearm. We'll get into that a little bit more later in the video. But this one is the most sort of AR-15-ish one of the variants. They all work the same. They all have the same operating system. They all have the same barrel. They all have the same trigger, all of those sorts of things. Just variants in terms of the actual feature set and how they look. So this particular one here was sent out by the folks over at Derya, just full disclosure on that one. And I requested this model because I think it looks the coolest, and you know, looking cool does matter in this particular case. So what we're going to do today is just walk through the different features of it, pros and cons, cost, do an accuracy test, all of those sorts of things. So we'll start out here at the end, I suppose, and just work our way back. All of them have an 18-inch barrel. They're obviously chambered for a 22 long rifle, and they are threaded for 1/2x28, which is, of course, the most common muzzle threading for suppressors as well as AR-15 flash hiders out there on the market. From what I understand, these are actually like banned state compliant. I don't really know how, because I don't really know banned state laws all that well, but I know it's California compliant, Maryland compliant, I think New York compliant, as well as our other variants of this gun. So that is definitely one thing for folks behind enemy lines that certainly is cool. But 18-inch barrel, we will test the accuracy here in just a second. This particular one has the M-LOK forend that you can see. It is all polymer on the forend. Obviously, there is no gas block because it is a blowback rifle. However, there is reinforcements right here on the handguard. Hopefully we'll get a photo. We can kind of roll that in there, and that just helps maintain rigidity of the handguard. It has what appears to be a continuous 1913 rail on top, but it actually isn't. It's two sections that come together. You guys can probably see the polymer mold on there, and then it meets up here with the top receiver, I guess we'll call it, of this particular firearm. And basic controls on this gun, pretty simple. It has your magazine release where you would expect it. Magazines for this rifle are fairly inexpensive. This is the 15 rounder. You've probably seen a bunch being used throughout this video, but they make a 10 rounder, a 15 rounder, and then a 25 rounder. The 25 rounder, of course, is cool because it holds more rounds than the other mags. However, it looks kind of funny in my opinion. So again, looking cool does matter. I think the sweet spot on that one might be the 15 rounder. We do have a charging handle over here on the left side. It is reciprocating, so just know that every time you fire around, the charging handle will reciprocate with it. That is good and bad. There's pros and cons to reciprocating charging handles. That said, on a 22, I would say most of the cons really don't matter. Over here on the left side of the gun, something that's a little bit different than what you're used to with AR-15s, that is your selector. So basically right there in that position is on safe, and then fire is down, of course. So similar in terms of positioning of the safety. However, it's a little bit different in terms of how it functions. And of course, when you put it down, if you are the uninitiated or trying to teach someone, you can see that red circle there. Red is dead. That's kind of the universal thing in terms of firearm selectors, and then put it back up and you are in the safe position. Now the trigger, we'll talk about that here in just a second in detail because it's different. It's definitely not an AR-15 trigger. The grip, however, is an AR-15 grip. So you can swap this out for whatever grip you want to. Just know, and I think most of you guys can see it, that seam right there on the receiver is at an angle. So the actual angle of your AR-15 grip is going to be a little bit different than it would be on an actual AR-15 because it's not perpendicular to the deck, if you will. Continuing on back on this model, and I believe one other of the TM-22s, the buffer tube itself, this piece right here, which would be a buffer tube, it's not actually a buffer tube. It's a blowback gun. I think most of you guys understand that, but the portion that would be a buffer tube is fixed to the receiver on this gun. So you can't swap it out, you can't change a buffer tube, nothing like that. However, it is a commercial spec, quote unquote, in terms of AR-15 sizing buffer tube. So if you want to swap your stocks, you can do so either with an adapter for a commercial spec, buffer extension, or you can just use a commercial spec stock. However, those are becoming less and less common in America. Like, I don't know, 10 years ago, they were actually pretty common. Nowadays, they're not. However, I would imagine that like probably 98% of people buying this will never swap the stock. Why? Because the stock's actually pretty good. As you guys can see, there are 6 positions for the stock, so you can set it up however you want. There's also this adjustable cheek piece here that you can rotate this wheel and adjust your height over the actual stock itself. It also has the QD points back here at the rear, as well as the sling, traditional sling attachment points back here. It works perfectly fine. Again, though, if you do want to swap it, you can do so. You can remove it and put it back on, but it's just a piece of polymer that, again, is a part of the receiver. So there is that. I suppose with the overview out of the way, let's head out to the range, shoot some groups, see how it prints a couple different loads, and then come back and get into a few more details on the rifle itself. All right, we're gonna put a few groups downrange with this rifle. I should note, I literally don't own match 22. It's kind of not how I personally see 22. I know some of you guys out there just lost your mind because of that, but it's okay. So I literally just grabbed the first 2 different loads I saw when I was walking out the door today. So up first, we have this Aguila. This is the copper plated super extra bullet. It's a 40 grainer. And then we have a Winchester load as well. Target is downrange at 50 yards. Wind is not too bad today. Obviously, wind's a big deal with 22 or any pistol caliber or rimfire caliber. So 50 yards, we've got a 1 to 10 primary arms on there. So plenty of glass for this distance. And of course, the Ruger and Dead Air 22 can on the end. And CTK Precision Rest. I think that's pretty much it. All the ammo that you guys have seen in today's video, of course, comes from our friends at Firearms Depot. And with that, let's get to shooting. Well, that actually looks really good. Maybe this stuff is match ammo. It doesn't say it, so I don't think it is. It wasn't priced like it. so there's that. All right. Next up, we have some Winchester Super Suppressed. This stuff here is supposedly subsonic, and we're about to find out. I actually don't know if it'll cycle this gun. I've never fired it in this gun, so we're all about to learn together. I don't know that it cycled fully. It felt like I had a dead trigger there. Yeah, it didn't pick up the next round. It's not on the rifle. This, again, is not, it's not the load you'd want to run on a semi-auto per se. It's kind of right on the edge. Well, it held the bolt open, so that's good. Those groups look pretty good too. Let's go grab it and measure them. Since y'all had the target cam, you already know these groups are pretty darn solid. That was the first one with Aguila there. We were right at 1 inch center to center. And then the Winchester subs didn't quite cycle it, but man, it likes those. We are right at center to center, 1/2 to 5/8 of an inch on that one. So again, for non-match 22 loads, I will take that all day long. Not that we've seen the accuracy, which again, pretty darn impressive in my personal opinion, particularly with that ammunition. A few more details to go over on the rifle before we talk about cost, performance, those sorts of things. Magazine there, one thing I didn't note earlier is that it does have an over insertion stop on there. They all do, where it meets on the lower receiver. I do dig that. That is a good feature in my particular opinion. Magazine release is smaller than probably what you're used to on an AR-15, but it works perfectly fine. And of course, it is only 22, so you don't really have to worry too much about using a lot of force to eject the magazine. Everything's pretty easy to manipulate on this gun, including, of course, our charging handle right there. One note on the magazines, as you guys can see there, they are single stack. So you want to make sure that you're careful when you're loading them to not get rim lock on there. Not a big deal, but for the new folks out there, it just is something to know. If you're not experienced with 22, you definitely can get rim lock on there, but it's easy to avoid with that single stack magazine. Once again, we are just going to double check that we are clear, and we are. Inside of that chamber, super dirty. Before I get into the trigger, let's talk about that. Disassembling the gun, nothing like an AR-15. As you guys can see, there are no pins or anything like that. On this particular model here, I'll just remove this to make it easier. We'll take this scope off there. Again, it is a 1913 top rail, so whatever optics you want to use, very easy to do so. It does come with these sights. They're definitely 22 sights. Like, they're not super durable. However, they will get you on target. They do hold zero. These are zeroed, as you guys can see there. The windage is perfectly fine, and the elevation is nothing crazy as well. They're zeroed at 25 yards. So no issues there. As many of you guys know, some 22 rifles, particularly if they have polymer top rails, they tend to not be zeroed all that easily, particularly not with centered windage and elevation. So that is a good sign in my personal opinion. However, what I was getting at is that disassembly and cleaning of this rifle is not standard. So you guys can see those screws right there on the top rail. There's also one back here. In order to disassemble this gun, you actually take that top rail section off, and that's how you get into the bolt as well as the chamber area of the gun. Now if you just wanted to like run a bore snake through it, for example, you can just hold this back, put a magazine in. They do have a last round bolt hold open feature on all of the magazines, which you guys probably noticed out there when we were shooting those groups. However, when you do remove the magazine, the bolt goes forward. It's sort of like using a Yugoslavian or a Serbian-made AK, if that makes sense. But the point is, this gun is extremely dirty because we haven't cleaned it since the test started. When I got it in, I did clean and lubricate it before starting firing. However, since then, we have not fired it. Hopefully, the wind's not too bad. But if it is, I apologize. But what I was getting at there was the disassembly on it is a little bit more cumbersome than an AR-15. However, it's not super complicated, and it's definitely better than, say, like a Ruger Mark IV or something like that, for sure. Now, let's talk about this particular trigger, which is why I was pulling it back and checking the chamber in the first place. It is a interesting trigger. It is not an AR-15 trigger like I mentioned earlier. Now, some sources online will say that it actually is safe to dry fire. Some 22s are, but in general, I just treat all 22s like they're not. For the purpose of this video, we will do it for you guys. As you can see there, it has a flat-ish shoe on there, not really flat. And when we go to press it, it's spongy. So it almost feels like it is for example, SIG 226 or like a Beretta 92, it almost feels like a portion of the double action take up, because the entire time as you're pressing it, you're putting input on that trigger. It's not just a take up. Like, you are working through that wall the entire time. It's a unique trigger in that regard. Like, the entire time you're pulling through the wall. There is a slight wall right there at the end before it actually breaks, but honestly, it's not much more. And the reason I say it's not much more is because the entire trigger pull weight on this gun is pretty light. It's just under 3 pounds on my Timney gauge, which is, again, pretty darn light from the factory, but it's not like a single stage, like crisp type trigger like you're used to with like a drop-in Timney trigger or something like that. It feels totally different. It's not bad. It's just somewhat unique. And now let's check out that reset. So you're basically all the way back out for the reset, and then you're back pulling again. And again, the entire time you're pulling through the brake. Again, light, super easy, but it almost feels like you have to milk it, if that makes sense, when you're firing it. Very different than your traditional mil-spec AR-15. Now, you guys saw the accuracy. Let's talk about reliability on this gun. Everything we fired through it has been bulk pack ammunition from our friends over at Firearms Depot. Combination of Federal, Aguila, as well as Remington. The Remington we fired through it was subsonic as well, and we had just over 800 rounds, so not a ton for a 22 rifle, but we had 2 malfunctions total, and I'm pretty sure that that was probably just ammunition. There was no issues on the rifle that I noticed in terms of like feeding at a crazy angle or anything like that. It's probably just bulk pack 22 ammunition doing what bulk pack 22 ammunition does. So in terms of reliability, I think that is perfectly fine, particularly when you consider the price point of this gun. Now, the TM-22s have been around for a while. They've actually been around for a while in America. They've just come in being imported by Rock Island Armory before this year. So this year is the first year that Derya USA has been established, and they've been importing them themselves. But these guns have been around for a while, so if you guys see like a RIA, Rock Island Armory version of this gun floating around, it's the same internals, just imported in a different configuration. And price point on this, again, it's going to depend on the configuration. All of them, though, MSRP are going to be under 300 units of measure. Street price on these for this particular model is going to be under 200 units of measure. So in terms of a value proposition, I actually think that's phenomenal, particularly when you consider the accuracy that you guys saw out there. If you wanted to use this for like a varmint gun, it totally could do it. Again, we were just using 2 random types of ammo out there at the range, and you guys saw how they grouped. It's plenty accurate for what the rifle is, no doubt about it. And especially if you were to put a suppressor on there like we have, something like this, you could take care of a lot of critters around the farm and no one would be any wiser. The reliability is perfectly fine in my opinion for a trainer type rifle. And in terms of parts availability, I don't think Derya USA is going anywhere. Derya, the parent company in Turkey, certainly isn't going anywhere because it's a gigantic defense company. And in fact, the TM-22 is one of the most produced rifles in the world, of course, in a ton of the different configurations that they have been produced in over the years. But this particular action under the name of TM-22 in various languages, super, super common rifle. In fact, I think it's second only in the world outside of America, because of course, in America, the 10-22 is going to dominate that conversation. But outside of America, I think the CZ is actually the only more common 22LR rifle in the world. So these things are made in high numbers. They've been around a long time. There are a ton of them floating around out there, and it just is a pretty proven platform at this point. Again, I'm glad to see them coming into America in more Americanized versions, if you will, but they also come in neutered versions as well, if that's what you're into, or if that's what is allowed where you live. There is that. But affordability and performance, I think it's pretty solid for what you're paying, in my opinion. Is it, you know, like the greatest, most durable, hard use AR-22 caliber rifle out there? Probably not. However, again, these things come in at a pretty affordable price. You guys saw the accuracy. Reliability has been perfectly fine, in my opinion. A few malfunctions for a 22 rifle at the round count it's at, I don't really think is problematic. And with that, I suppose that's pretty much it. If you guys have any questions about the rifle, anything like that, you can always post down below in the comments. You can also post those questions over at my various social media sites that you see down here at the bottom of your screen. The best place to follow me, my personal opinion anyway, is going to be over on X. We have the least amount of censorship there. And of course, if there are smoking deals, we'll post them up on X. We'll also send those out in our daily deals email. You can sign up for that by visiting the website here on your screen. And when you sign up for the daily deals email, you actually get put on 2 different email lists. One email goes out every day, as the name indicates, and it typically has 8 to 10 of the best deals that we find around the internet. If the item, whatever the item is in the email on a given day, it's the cheapest I know of for that item, because that way I've already done the price comparison for you, so it saves you some time and hopefully saves you some money. Additionally, there's a good meme in there that a lot of folks like, so if you want to sign up just for the meme, you can do so. Of course, you can unsubscribe at any time, but no one unsubscribes like it's not a thing, which is great. It's good feedback for me. Additionally, it will get you put on an email that goes out once a month. And that email has all the videos since the previous month's email went out. So that way there's no big tech giant censoring your eyes from my content. Speaking of that, if you're not subscribed, go ahead and do so. It's perfectly free if you like this type of video. We do a lot of firearm and firearm gear related reviews here on the channel. If you have subscribed, you're not seeing 2 to 4 videos a week here. We're putting them up. There's just an algorithm censoring you from them. So the email is a good way around that. Lastly, we do have an SMS list. And you can sign up for that by texting the word gear to the code here on your screen. You can also head over to the website and sign up the old-fashioned way. Either way works just fine. SMS goes out at most once a day, as you can hear. The geese are big fans of the SMS list, but it goes out at most once a day, and it contains one of 2 things: either a smoking deal that will very likely sell out quite quickly, which is why I like to get it in your SMS inbox, or a new video that has just dropped, once again, letting you guys see my content when I put it up and getting around that algorithm. And with that, that's pretty much all I got. Thank you all for watching. I truly appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing everybody in the next video.